Welcome back to Sleep Medicine and Physical Therapy, Part 6, Evidence from Basic Science and its Contribution to Physical Therapy and Sleep Medicine. Today's topic is sleep and musculoskeletal system. I'm Chris, physiotherapy student. What is the relationship between sleep and skeletal muscle? Before answering this question, it is important to note that understanding sleep alone is not an easy task. Sleep is a physiological phenomenon that remains a scientific enigma. However, it is recognized due to its importance and its impact on health when it becomes inadequate. Adequate sleep functions are attributed to health. On the other hand, the sleep debt generates significant negative organic changes, with an emphasis of metabolic, hormonal, immunological, and cognitive functions. Collectively, these changes can disrupt skeletal muscle homeostasis and compromise the normal functioning of this tissue. There is a popular knowledge that the skeletal muscle grows and recovers during sleep. Nevertheless, many questions remain without answers about the role of sleep in muscle recovery, as well as its influence on muscle physiology. In mid-2011, studies on the subject were published and gained notoriety by demonstrating the possible mechanisms underlying the sleep-skeletal muscle binomial. However, there are still gaps to be filled. This chapter aims to discuss the complex and bidirectional relationship between sleep and skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is one of the most dynamic and plastic tissues of the human body, representing about 40% of the total body weight. They can store between 50 to 75 of the all-body proteins and are responsible for 30 to 50% of the whole body's protein turnover. Muscles are composed mainly of water, protein, and other substances. There are more than 600 muscles distributed throughout the human body, and these tissues have several functions, including mechanical, structural, metabolic, and endocrine. In this context, skeletal muscles have been seen as much more than effectors of muscle actions or structure for skeletal support. The literature is concise in showing that skeletal muscles are able to synthesize, store, and secrete substances that can signal the muscle itself, neighboring tissues, or modulate the activity of various body systems. In addition to these functions, it is known that skeletal muscles contribute to weight loss, together with the immune system activity and endocrine function, highlighting in recent years. Therefore, understanding the factors that can influence skeletal muscle tissue, such as sleep or its damage, becomes essential to develop effective intervention strategies to promote and maintain population health. Sleep and skeletal muscle. What is the relationship? In 2005, Siegel proposed that sleep is a highly complex, active, and dynamic behavior that modulates cognitive function, mood, and immune, endocrine, cardiovascular, and neuromuscular systems. The main theories related to sleep are allocated to three categories: energy metabolism, related to modulation of the immune system and inflammatory processes, and, finally, the key role of sleep in the process of physical restoration. These categories of sleep functions are directly related to the physiology of skeletal muscle tissue, making it possible to establish the relationship between them. Furthermore, sleep seems to modulate factors related to memory and mood. Precisely to physical restoration, it is known that N3 stage plays an important role in the modulation of hormone secretion that has fundamental functions for skeletal muscle tissue, such as insulin and growth hormone. In contrast, global impairments in the sleep pattern of young adults were associated with a decrease in the secretion of testosterone, growth hormone, insulin, and increase in cortisol levels, which represent catabolic signals, as well as inflammatory markers such as the interleukin 6, interleukin 1, and TNF alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha, which are also negatively influence the integrity of the skeletal muscle tissue. The first study that proposed the pathway by which sleep, adequate or inadequate, could influence skeletal muscle was done in 2011. Later, the same group demonstrated in animal models that this hypothesis could in fact be true. Therefore, it was observed that rats deprived of sleep for 96 hours presented reduction in muscle volume with a concomitant increase in corticosterone concentration and testosterone reduction. These initial results stimulated the development of a series of other studies that proposed to investigate intervention strategies that could minimize the deleterious effects of sleep debt on skeletal muscle tissue and biomechanical pathways by which this phenomenon could be explained. To understand these paths, it is necessary for us to remember how the protein turnover occurs. In general, regardless of the type of stimulus, skeletal muscle tissue morphological adaptations are pervaded by changes in protein turnover. Strictly speaking, when there are higher signals of synthesis than of protein degradation, there are an accumulation of muscle mass, hypertrophy, or hyperplasia, while when there are high rates of protein degradation, there is a reduction in the amount of this tissue, muscle atrophy. As previously mentioned, protein turnover is regulated by different factors, among which are anabolic hormones, testosterone, growth hormone, and insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. In this perspective, it is necessary to consider that skeletal muscle tissue integrity is associated with the nutritional status of the person. That is, in situations where there is prolonged fasting or poor distribution of macronutrients, the reduction of muscle mass can occur. On the other hand, when the diet is adjusted, especially related to protein supply, it favors stimulation of protein synthesis. Moreover, active lifestyle maintenance is also associated with increased or maintenance of function and amount of muscle mass. The main intracellular mechanism involved in these processes is related to a cascade of biomechanical signals that modulate the activity of the phosphatidylinosyl 3 kinase pathway, protein kinase B, rapamycin target, The PAM pathway. In general, insulin and IGF-1, for example, promote the initial stimulation of this pathway. Testosterone and some intermediaries produced by exercise can directly activate the AKT. Some nutrients, such as amino acids, for example, can directly activate mTOR, the main controller of protein synthesis. mTOR has the function of stimulating the assembly of the ribosomal complex through the 70 kilodaltons ribosomal protein, incite protein transcription through the 4EBP1 activity, and new proteins translation. Sleep deprivation causes a catabolic state, an increase of glucocorticols and pro-inflammatory cytokines, which favor the activation of phosphoprotein and suppression of mTOR, stimulating the ubiquitin system proteasome or the lysosomal autophagy, hence protein degradation. Resistance exercise, on the other hand, promotes the creation of an anabolic environment through the increase of hormones such as growth hormone, IGF-1, and testosterone, which activate the PAM pathway, in parallel with the inhibition of myostatin, increasing protein synthesis. In addition, the mechanical stimulus of resistance exercise through the AKT-mTOR pathway, followed by the activation of the P70S6K protein and inhibition of the 4EBP1 protein, leads to increased protein synthesis. This integrated sequence of events caused by resistance exercise makes it potential non-pharmacological intervention for skeletal health in the face of stress of sleep debt. Sleep debt and skeletal muscle. Inadequate sleep may occur as a result of sleep deprivation or sleep restriction. Both conditions represent stress to the organism with a strong influence on the breakdown of homeostasis. This situation increases the sympathetic autonomous nervous system and the neuroendocrine axis activation, HPA, or hypothalamic pituitary endocrine axis. The activation of both stress response systems favors a catabolic scenario characterized by the reduction of anabolic hormone. Studies involving animal models exhibited that 96 hours of sleep deprivation reduced IGF-1 and testosterone concentrations and increased the corticosterone concentration, thus contributing to the installation or maintenance of the catabolic state. All this hormonal panorama observed in the animal models submitted to acute sleep deprivation protocols is also verified in chronic conditions of sleep restriction. In animal models, 6 hours of sleep restriction during 21 days also presented high levels of corticosterone and denoting catabolic status even in long term. Inadequate sleep is a determining condition for the imbalance of the anabolism-catabolism ratio, which may generate consequences for skeletal muscle tissue regeneration. Although there is strong evidence demonstrating the deleterious effects of sleep deprivation on skeletal muscle of animal models, few studies analyzed this relationship in humans. Danto et al. 2020 investigated whether sleep deprivation after eccentric exercise-induced muscle injury could be modified the hormone and the cytokine profiles in humans. A randomized crossover clinical trial was performed with 10 people. Participants underwent the protocol of unilateral eccentric exercise-induced muscle damage, which comprised of 240 eccentric contractions of the knee extensor muscles using an isokinetic dynamometer, having isometric muscle voluntary contraction tests and blood collected serially throughout the protocol. The protocol was tested under 2 different conditions. In one condition, it was performed after 48 hours of total sleep deprivation, followed by 12 hours of normal sleep. In the other, it was performed followed by 3 nights of regular sleep. Muscle voluntary contraction and serum creatine kinase levels increased equally in both conditions. Regarding the hormones and cytokines, that no difference was detected in testosterone levels between conditions, but IGF-1, cortisol, total cortisol testosterone ratio, and IL-6 increased in total sleep deprivation conditions. Thus, it was postulated that total sleep deprivation after eccentric exercise-induced muscle damage did not delay the recovery of muscle strength, but modifies inflammatory and hormonal responses. Taking this information together, it is speculated about possible strategies that can minimize and or even reverse the deleterious effects of sleep debt in skeletal muscle tissue. However, what are these strategies? Physical exercise and protein supplementation are non-pharmacological strategies that have gained notoriety in the field of skeletal muscle tissue health in sleep debt conditions. In the context of physical exercise, more specifically to the resistance model, it is the main choice to be adopted when aiming at skeletal muscle health. The mechanical load, hormonal, metabolic changes, and several intracellular events resulting from the practice of resistance exercise contribute to the improvement of strength and increase in muscle protein synthesis. Resistance exercise generates acute hormonal responses, especially the increase of IGF-1 levels, which plays an important role in the remodeling of skeletal muscle tissue. The anabolic effects of IGF-1 involve the activation of the PAM pathway and stimulation for proliferation, survival, and differentiation of satellite cells, which collectively favor protein synthesis, resulting in muscle growth. In addition, the mechanical deformation of muscle fibers is already able to stimulate the AKT-mTOR pathway independently of hormonal changes and immune inflammatory responses. In parallel, molecular pathways involved with protein degradation and consequent muscular atrophy, such as the ubiquitin system, present a reduction of their activity by resistance exercise stimulating. This occurs because of the increased activity of the PAM pathway, which promotes the higher phosphorylation of phospho becoming inactive. Against this scenario, some researchers hypothesize these physiological adaptations caused by resistance exercise could minimize or even delete the harmful effects of sleep debt on skeletal muscle. Resistance training performed prior to sleep deprivation exerted a protective effect on skeletal muscle, minimizing the reduction of IGF-1 and testosterone levels, increasing the expression of proteins involved in protein synthesis, and attenuating those involved in degradation pathways. Another potential intervention is to minimize sleep deprivation-induced muscle atrophy was amino acid supplementation, more specifically leucine supplementation. Leucine is an essential branched chain amino acid known to exert anabolic effects through its ability to stimulate protein synthesis and inhibit protein degradation. The mechanisms involved include activation of the mTOR direct signaling pathway and consequently phosphorylation of P70S6K and 4E-BP1 proteins, resulting in increased protein synthesis. In conditions that lead to muscle atrophy, such as cancer-induced cachexia, aging, and limb immobilization, leucine supplementation has promoted the maintenance of muscle tropism. But what about the sleep debt condition? In this way, Souza et al. Submitted rats to 7 consecutive days to leucine supplementation. Whose last 4 days coincided with the protocol of sleep deprivation for 96 hours. The daily dose of leucine supplementation used was 1.35 grams per kg of body mass of each animal. At the end of the study, the authors came across an interesting finding. Muscle atrophy caused by sleep deprivation preferentially affected muscles composed of muscle fibers of glycolytic predominance type 2 compared to those muscles of oxidative predominance type 1. In relation to leucine supplementation, it was able to attenuate part of the observed muscular atrophy, but only in the type 2B muscle fibers. Although there is no certainty, there is evidence pointing out to humans experiencing the same phenomena supporting these hypotheses. The relationship between sleep and skeletal muscle has been explored in the context of adequate sleep and mainly in specific conditions of inadequate sleep. Nevertheless, how does this relationship happen in less acute conditions and during health disease processes? First, it is necessary to understand that the aging process is continuum and is associated with the quantitative and qualitative changes of several body systems. Among these changes, it is possible to mention sleep and skeletal muscle tissue itself. Specifically on skeletal muscle, some older people, about 10%, may experience an important change until they develop sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is a disease characterized by the reduction and deterioration of muscle mass and function, commonly related to the aging process. This pathophysiology is multifactorial and comprises genetic, neuroendocrine, inflammatory factors, and nutritional status and level of physical activity. There exists a scenario in which skeletal muscle is influenced by a healthy aging process, added with the changes in sleep pattern across age. In this sense, the aging process, similar to the condition of sleep debt, is recognized by the imbalance of the anabolism-catabolism relationship. Anabolic hormone pathways deteriorate with advancing age, while catabolic pathways are enhanced. Hypercortisolemia is related to the muscle catabolism in aging, muscle weakness, and weight loss. In older people, there is a U-form association between the prevalence of sarcopenia and sleep duration. Older individuals with short or long sleep duration have a higher prevalence of sarcopenia compared to those with normal sleep duration. Among the most plausible pathophysiology hypotheses related to sarcopenia and inadequate sleep, hormone dysregulation and pro-inflammatory scenario play an imperative role. The first refers to the increase in cortisol levels in contrast to the decrease in IGF-1 and testosterone levels, creating a catabolic environment which promotes muscle degradation and loss of muscle mass. The latter concerns the increase in pro-inflammatory cytokines such as the C-reactive protein, which appears to be involved in the process of muscle atrophy. In this context, the practice of physical exercise combined with a good diet gains notoriety by promoting benefits to the muscle health, playing an important role in the prevention and/or attenuation of sarcopenia, as well as improving the quality of sleep. Final words. Adequate sleep plays a key role in maintaining and recovering the physiology of skeletal muscle. Maintaining the integrity of skeletal muscle depends on the balance between protein synthesis and degradation, both processes sensitive to several factors, including sleep, adequate nutrition, and physical exercise. In the same way, the evidence points out that the skeletal muscle healthy seems to positively influence sleep quality. This is Chris, physiotherapy student. Hope you have enjoyed the topic of sleep and musculoskeletal system. That's all for today. Thank you.